Next, I'm going to ask Lochan, Alagh, to please come on stage and introduce the next panel, which will talk about the future of work in the age of data and AI. We all have our own perspective, but in this panel, we are going to see what is the perspective of the venture capitalists. How do they see the future of work? Lochan is the co-founder and managing partner of VC Nest. She is a board member of the IITBAA Area Alumni Association, and she is currently serving as the Chief Governance Officer of the association. She has been an active member of the community for many years. Formerly, she was the executive director of Falcon X. At IIT Roorkee, I know Lochan to have been super active. So she has been the senator of the Students' Affairs Council. She was the hostel president. She organized tech fests and cultural fests. So she is really a dynamic personality. I'm so excited for her to be on stage today. Welcome, Lochan.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much. Well, this is an exciting session. Just a show of hands, how many of you are entrepreneurs? Wow, it's a good crowd. And how many of you are wannabe entrepreneurs? Just one? All right. So Silicon Valley is a hotbed of innovation, and we are really excited to hear perspectives of some of the VCs, the investors who are backing some of the amazing entrepreneurs in the Valley. So I would now like to invite on stage Ashmeet Sidana, who is a veteran VC here, and he's the chief engineer. He doesn't call himself as managing partner. He's a chief engineer of engineering capital. So please put your hands together for Ashmeet Sidana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you.
All right. And then we have Raviraj Jain, who's a partner of Lightspeed Capital. And we would now like to invite on stage Apoorva Pandhi, who's a managing director at Zetta Venture Partners. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, volunteers, for putting together this amazing event today. So, quick round of introductions, starting with Ashmeet.
Hi, everyone. As Lochan said, I'm the founder of Engineering Capital. I call it venture capital for engineers because we are typically the first investor in software companies that are taking high technical risk as compared to market risk. All companies take market risk. Some companies take technical risk. And that's what Engineering Capital invests in.
Awesome. This is Raviraj Jain. I'm one of the partners at Lightspeed. We are a global venture capital firm, manage around $25 billion in capital, invest across sectors, stages, and geographies. And I largely invest in AI and frontier technology companies at Lightspeed. Great to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Apoorva Pandhi. I'm managing director at Zetta Ventures. Zetta has been around for more than a decade. It was founded as an AI and data native fund. Over the years, we've been investing out of our 3 funds. Currently, it's a $180 million fund. And we invest at inception. So inception, leaving nomenclature aside, it could be pre-seed, seed, pre-A, and that range, and mostly in data and AI companies. Very excited to be here and also on the same stage with friends and mentors.
Very exciting. So I was listening to the keynote today, and Karthik was mentioning that what we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years is what we have never seen in the last 60, 70 years. First, there was a pandemic, then wars, inflation, and now this AI wave. And it's very exciting to hear the perspective of investors, because they are those who are seeing the upcoming trends early on. And in this session, we have like 25 minutes. We will be dividing this session in 4 segments. First, a broader trend. Second, startup versus incumbents. And third is data and security, data and privacy. And fourth, we would be taking questions from the audience here. So starting on the broader trend, Ashmeet, as I said earlier, that VCs see the trends early on because you are meeting startups on a regular basis. So what's your perspective on the shift that we have been seeing in the last 2 years since the inception of generative AI? How do you see the advancements coming in the coming 3 to 5 years?
Well, I'm incredibly excited by the opportunities that are being created by AI. I believe it is a generational technology of the same scale of impact as the desktop PC, the internet, or the iPhone smartphone had in terms of it being generational, and possibly it is even larger than that. What is most exciting about AI is that for the first time, we are seeing innovation at all levels of the technology stack. So as an engineer, you are seeing innovation at the chip level, at the system level, in AI itself as a frontier technology, and then of course the applications of AI. And so there's tremendous opportunity both for incumbents and startups. We'll get into that later, that we are seeing with AI right now.
Raviraj.
Yeah, I think I obviously agree with what Ashmeet said. I actually feel very fortunate to be living in this time and being here working in tech, because to Ashmeet's point, we are going to see one of the biggest, and the most impactful technology that'll transform our lives across sectors, geos, and it's going to be massive. So it's very, very clear. Some of the things to think about this is this is the first time we've seen a company in OpenAI going from almost zero to, I guess, $4 or $5 billion in revenue in 18 months time frame. This is the first time we've seen applications being adopted by hundreds of millions of people around the world in almost no time, right? If you talk about ChatGPT or generative AI, it's not only something that we talk about here in the Valley. It's actually my home. I'm from Jabalpur in MP. My dad knows about it and uses it almost every day. That level of impact, brand awareness has been insane. All of that, when honestly we haven't really built much as it relates to application, right? Most of the value in the current wave has gone to NVIDIA, which is great. Typically, if you think about any trend, it looks like a funnel, right? Where the infrastructure gets the least value and application gets the most value. This trend so far looks like an inverted funnel, where NVIDIA, being the infrastructure provider, got the most value out of it so far, and then foundation model, but applications not so much. So I feel like that's the most exciting part. There's massive awareness. There are companies who are gaining incredible amount of market cap and revenues, and yet the applications are very early. So I'm just excited for what the next few years have in store for us.
I'll just make 2 points because Raviraj and Ashmeet have really articulated the entire ecosystem well. I think the first is that this entire platform shift has been driven by the model providers, powered by compute. And so that's the 2 layers that have received the most amount of capital in today's market. And we've seen massive amounts of capital go in, not just from the venture side, but also from the hyperscaler side and those 2 layers. But there are a lot of layers that Ashmeet pointed out: the data layer, the tooling layer that helps the models be in production, the application layer itself. And a lot of those layers haven't gone mainstream yet. And what I'm excited about is, at least from an early venture perspective, that there's a lot of opportunity in making that platform shift a reality by investing in those 3 layers, which haven't really taken off yet. That's one. The second is, while there's been a platform shift, the interesting thing is that we've seen the technology grow. A lot of people talk about technology growing in a hyperbolic way. I think, interestingly, technology has grown in a very linear way. It's grown very consistently, but what's grown in a very hyperbolic way has been the consumer demand and the way the customers have adopted the technology, which has been super interesting to see, from the top-down mandates in different companies around buying AI, bringing these applications in production. Haven't a lot of times, a few years back before the AI shift happened, you used to see companies go from 0 to 10 in ARR in 4 or 5 years. Now you can see that happen within a few months, which doesn't mean that specific company is going to win. It just shows that there's immense demand from the consumer side, which is the promising piece in the market today.
Yeah, you said that now startups are able to get to revenue making stage very early on, and as we are in this new innovation super cycle, it's also said that now startups do not need a lot of investments later on. Early stage funds have an advantage because as with the growth of AI agents, AI advancements, startups just are automating all their operations and they do not need later stage funding because with very few employees, they're able to get into a lot of advancements within the company. And but everyone has been saying that, and we have been seeing as well, incumbents are striding the wave here because they have well-funded, like they have funding, they have talent. How are you seeing that these small companies are getting this competitive edge against these incumbents? And what are some of the successful stories that you can share from the investments that you have made so far? As Apoorva, started with you here.
So I think the fundamental question that we ask is that in today's market, if you're a startup, do you even need to go after incumbents? And the reason for that is that, let's take the example of, there are a few categories that have, like we've seen things break out. One of those categories is Jain, for example, where there are like multiple companies, right from co-pilots of the world to Poolside to like the Cursor and a bunch of them. And if you look at the average like compensation of a developer, let's assume like it's like anywhere in the range of like 150 to 300K depending on like the tenure of the developer. Around 10 to 20K of that today has been going into incumbent tooling, whether it's like Atlassians of the world or ServiceNows of the world and so on. There's still the remaining 200 to 250K, which is FTEs. That's the work that is being done in a very indeterministic way. And I think AI should address things that is not being addressed in a deterministic way today. Things that are doing a good job for deterministic workflow, why replace that? There's enough market outside of that where, and that's why a lot of these companies have raised millions and billions of dollars, and these are startups that are, sometimes they are training their own model, sometimes they are not, but what they're effectively trying to do in this example is that they're trying to create an autonomous developer. And it's not always to kind of replace a developer, because I think that's the other question, right? Are you trying to replace a developer or are you trying to augment them? I think initially it'll always start by augmenting, and we feel that like there'll always be a human in the loop. But over time, like when you look at the broader market, not everyone in the market can attract specialists in their teams. Like not everyone has DevOps, not everyone has SREs. And if you're able to build an autonomous developer with different specialties, then you should be able to like get up to speed with whatever you want to do as a company. And at the end of the day, it's all about customer NPS and customer satisfaction. So I feel pretty happy as a user today in today's market that I have like enough companies trying to personalize things for me and making my experience better. So that's my quick take on like incumbent versus startup.
What's your take here, Ashmeet, starting?
So I think there are two frameworks we can apply to answer this question. The first one is the classic Clayton Christensen framework on startups versus incumbents in terms of, is AI a sustaining innovation or is it a disruptive innovation? So classically, we understand of the desktop PC as a sustaining innovation. In other words, it helped incumbents more than it helped the disruptors or the startups who were in the space. The internet, on the other hand, was a disruptive innovation. So when the internet came along, Amazon throws on Amazon.com, suddenly they are equal to Walmart.com, which has this massive real estate investment, huge stores, logistics, etc. All of that is irrelevant, and now the startup, Amazon, has an advantage over Walmart, which had all of this investment in it. The question is, what is AI? Is AI a sustaining innovation or a disruptive innovation? Since we have limited time, I will tell you that I personally believe AI is actually both. And there are aspects of AI which are going to play as a sustaining innovation. In other words, they will help incumbents, and there are aspects that will disrupt the incumbents. And the best example to study for that is Google. Arguably the company that has contributed the most to AI itself, including the original Transformers paper that had so much impact in the more recent work in AI. And yet you see Google struggling in terms of being able to apply AI, what AI will do for Google, etc. I think that story has not been written yet. We will see depending on how they execute, and that's what makes it so fun over here. I'll end by saying that every startup has two basic advantages over incumbents. Number one, they can move faster. it doesn't matter how good you are as a large company, a startup can always move faster. And number two, you can innovate. If you have something innovative, it gives you some advantage over what incumbents are doing. And that's what makes me optimistic as a venture capitalist. And I have invested in companies that have gone directly against Google and have won, against other incumbents and have won. And this is one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to really go out and build a generational company.
Yeah, I think a lot of great points being made, so I'll be brief. Number one, around $5 trillion in value has been created by generative AI in the last few years. 2.5 trillion was NVIDIA. The other two was between Microsoft and Google and Facebook. Basically, the only part that went to startups was 500 billion of that, of which 150 is OpenAI. So you can see incumbents are already benefiting massively and will continue to. That's number one. Number two, incumbents are becoming more nimble and smart. Number three, the initial phases of generative AI is about massive amount of capital and great people, which they have all the advantages for. So yes, the reality is that in a lot of places, incumbents will win. But I will tell you this much, my framework as it relates to AI is it's not either or, it's and. We have to move from the world of like limited things to world of abundance in what this can do. And there are several companies that will come in. Like the number of, like in 2006, the most valuable company was ExxonMobil, it was worth $350 billion. And I think only one company out of the top 5 was a tech company. Now all top 5 companies in the world are tech companies, and the most valuable ones, I think the top 4 are worth more than $1 trillion, right? So I think the world has shifted massively, powered by the mobile wave, and the AI wave will change it even more. So I think I would say incumbents will win, and so will startups. Like a couple of startups, since you asked, that I can point out is there's a company like, and Arvind Jain will be talking here, is like Glean, right? Which is building the platform for people to search in enterprises and manage and drive a lot of really powerful workflows. It's going to be building things that may compete with Microsoft and Google and everyone else, but they have built a best-in-class platform that's being adopted by a lot of enterprises, and it's one of the fastest growing enterprise companies ever. So that's one example where they're actually going after a new workflow with best-in-class technology and also may compete with the incumbents. The other one I would say is a very different example is a company called EvenUp, which is a legal AI company that I invested in. And they're going after legal workflows where, frankly, there's no real incumbent. So I think the depth and breadth of AI across industries is going to be so much bigger that there are places where no incumbents exist, and we will see companies that are worth, north of $100 billion eventually.
You know, Raviraj has given some great examples in terms of the incumbent versus startup framework. Let me give you an example of true innovation. And this is an IIT example, so I think it's more interesting over here. Binny Gill, IIT alum, started a company called Cognitos, where he has a fundamental technical insight in terms of how AI, not just generative AI can be made very reliable. Hallucination-free, and yet work in what we call generative AI, which has all of these hallucination problems. I'm very proud to share, I did the seed, Vinod, who's also IIT, of course, from Vinod Khosla did the A. He's built a real business. He's solved a fundamental technical problem. And then we're going to apply it to many businesses. Which exact business you apply it to? Just like Raviraj said, there's a huge surface area to which you could apply a technology like that. So both incumbents and startups can win. And when someone will have a creative new idea, I love engineers, I'm an engineer myself, most of us here are engineers. That's where it starts. You have that idea and you say, okay, what new problem can I solve with this? And what business can I build around that? That's how startups come about.
And sorry to keep harping on this, but one point I'll make is world's GDP is $100 trillion. You know how much is the total SaaS spend at a global scale? It's $280 billion. It's nothing compared to the global GDP. So imagine, again, think abundance, not limiting. If the world total spend on SaaS is $280 billion, there's so much white space for the world to adopt AI. So people say, like, someone said that like software will eat the world. I don't know if that really happened. It basically nibbled on the world, but I think AI is going to transform the world. When you think about that, it should be 10, 20, 30 times more than what software spend is. That will create opportunities we never thought about.
Raviraj, you talked about the depth and breadth of the impact of AI. There are so many factors where the impact of AI can be profound, but unrealized yet. So if you can quote some examples of these sectors and industries where you see that AI is going to play a transformative role, and this question is a grabby for any one of you. Would love to know which sectors are going to see the transformative effect of AI.
Yeah, the short answer is all, right? But I think to be more specific and hopefully more helpful is I think any sector that involves people and some amount of services will get massively transformed. Legal is one we talked about. Accounting is another one. There are other places where there are a lot of back office roles, call centers, everything where there's like a human in the loop involved. I think that will likely get automated. What's not going to get automated anytime soon is plumbing. So, if anyone here is a plumber, their job is secure. I can't speak the same about knowledge workers, but basically anything where services involved or there are human beings doing some amount of analytical / creative work, which is a lot.
I also feel like there are phases of what use cases and which industries will get disrupted. And I think the phases are decided by the capabilities of the models. And today the models have great capabilities in terms of memory. They remember a lot of things. There are traces of reasoning online, and they don't really capture like the entire thinking of or the mental models that people have within a company when they do certain things. So until that happens, or until you build kind of a general purpose reasoning framework, which the model providers are working on, like GPT-4o is already better than the previous version in terms of reasoning. I think one is the multi-chain reasoning. The second is like objective-based task execution. So if you're able to get better at those things, there'll be more applications. In terms of applications today that are ripe, they are actually a lot dependent on the emergent capabilities, which are focused on code generation. They're dependent on content generation. They're dependent on some kind of workflow automation. And I think they align better with either like things in life sciences or healthcare, where we applied that to R&D. In those cases, you kind of train your own model, build your own models for like developing a new drug or discovering a new target. It could be in retail, where you're actually using that for personalization or search. Because that's a great application of the current emergent capabilities of the models. Financial services and healthcare, interestingly, like the regulated spaces, whether it's banking, healthcare, financial services, legal, have been the first ones to adopt AI. I was talking to a bank the other day. It's one of the biggest banks in Australia, and they have like more than 30 agents in production for customer support. And this is not even through a vendor. It's like all in-house built agents. Now, the definition of agent is an open question, whether it's like a simple agent or a complex agent. But the interesting thing is that all of these early emerging capabilities have given people ideas as to apply it to what use cases. And I feel that there'll be more depth of those use cases as the capabilities of these models get better. And that's when we'll get to true agentic AI, which is not there yet.
Let me build on that by making a prediction. In a few years, let's say 5 years, this distinction between software and AI is going to disappear. There's going to be no such thing as AI and then software. All software will be AI, all AI will be software. These two things are going to merge into one. Right now, we talk of them as two separate things. That distinction will disappear. Second prediction is that, ironically, the place where AI has had the most impact at the earliest stage is actually on software itself. So software development itself is being impacted with AI. Generative AI certainly, but also other forms of AI are being used over there. And so that is where some of the dark scenarios for AI come from, because that's a recursive process. Software itself is so impactful. If you impact that with AI, what is going to be the impact of that is a little bit unknown right now, and there are some dark scenarios of what happens if that really takes off and we can have software, writing software for ourselves. I personally am not a believer of those scenarios. I think those are very far away, and certainly software jobs are going to be secure. We are going to have more software developers 5 and 10 years from now than today, not less, and that will happen. And so the opportunity in AI is enormous in terms of where you go, including in software itself.
All three of you have been investing for a long time. How has your investment strategy changed since the inception of generative AI? I'm sure investors are also using the tools that are available now, but would love to know from each one of you, like how has the strategy been changed, and how are you evaluating and assessing startups now?
I can go first on that. At the most fundamental level, at first principles, nothing has changed. It's another technology wave. The principles of venture capital, which is put in a small amount of money to have a hugely disruptive impact, to create a massive business, those first principles have not changed. What has changed is some of the things that we talked about a few minutes ago, is because it is so innovative, because it has so much impact, there is an opportunity which has been created. Markets come in cycles. I believe this is a generational cycle. In other words, this is a once in 10, 20, 30-year opportunity. And so the timing is now. And that has changed. That has created a huge new surface area of opportunities where a startup can go in, perhaps with a small amount of capital, make a huge impact, or with a large amount of capital, make a huge impact. Because simultaneously to AI, venture capital matured as an industry, matured as a business. And venture capital grew both horizontally and vertically. And so now you have companies like, let's take an example, WhatsApp. That was a highly capital efficient company which created $20 billion of market cap with a very small amount of capital, just 2 rounds of investment, and had only 40 employees when it got acquired. Those types of opportunities exist with AI today. I think you will see companies of that ilk. In other words, a very small amount of capital, very small number of people having a disproportionate impact. But you will also see the capital-intensive businesses where billions of dollars are required to build these models and data centers and run megawatts of compute before a result can be seen. And so that's really the change for me as a venture capitalist, is to parse that landscape, choose that subset of opportunities that work with my fund, which may be different from how it works for a different fund.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's given we are multi-stage, we can write $1 million check, we can write a $100 million check. I would say venture capital is a business of high risk and higher return, hopefully. AI has just made it higher risk and even higher returns, which means that you are betting on things that may or may not be as durable, because the next model comes out and a lot of things that seem, or companies that seem very exciting today, may cease to exist. So there's a lot more risk around that. But at the same time, to Ashmeet's point, like the entire landscape is going to be recreated, right? And I think there'll be new companies that'll come in and they'll fight the incumbents, or it's like there's just so much depth and breadth of opportunities we are seeing, like we've never seen that before. And that's really exciting, but also sort of like keeping us up at night.
I think the first big question is, like, as a seed stage fund, you pick your battles, right? And I think it's not just about picking your battles, also looking at the market and seeing whether there's an opportunity for something more. And I think when you look at the model layer today, one argument is that, is there even a place for another generalized model? And the consensus is that it's kind of assimilating around like few players. Similarly, in case of compute, both of these areas, tons of capital is gone. Now you can decide not to play in these areas. And then the question is, like, in terms of market timing, where do you get to next? Then come the 3 layers of like data, tooling, applications, as we discussed earlier. Interestingly, in this market, unlike the SaaS market, like a lot of the tooling came after the applications were in production. And so the tooling figured out like what were the needs of the developers, the ML engineers, the data scientists, and a lot of the tooling came out of big tech. It spun out of big tech. It was open sourced, Kubernetes, all of these different things came out of big tech. And they were pretty robust. Like, they were not easy to use, and then there were companies to manage those things as well. but they were more production-ready tooling. I think the big question in the tooling today, there's been a lot of noise and capital that's gone into the tooling layer. And so as a fund, what we're thinking is like, is tooling even the right place to focus on today? Like where does that tooling market go in the future? And I'm not saying that there is no opportunity in tooling. There's still like unique things that entrepreneurs tell you, which you are like wowed and amazed by. And I don't think people have solved the tooling issue today as well. Like still like all of the things around vector databases and RAG systems are still disparate and hard to use. And fine-tuning is still like an open question in minds of people that is that even a real thing? So there are too many questions on that side, but still a lot of capital has gone into that. So the next question is like in the data layer and in the application layer, where do you start focusing on? And so that all goes back to market timing. That all goes back to the fundamentals of investing, talking to like the practitioners themselves. The other thing is that in this market, there's an emergence of like a new category of users, which is application developers, which have become the ML experts in a lot of companies. And I think that also has ramifications on the investments you make, because the investments that you're making should also be capital efficient. If they don't need to attract ML engineers, if application developers can help them build the stack internally and for their end customers, and if they are able to use co-pilots to kind of extend the capacity of the existing developer teams, then they should be able to be more capital efficient going forward. So those are the two things that are going on in our minds as we are kind of constantly reassessing the market. And it's also a very interesting time because investors, researchers, academics, operators are all learning at the same time, which is very unprecedented compared to before.
Absolutely. And as Raviraj mentioned, the shift is happening so quickly that there is a lot of unpredictability as well. With that, we would like to take 2 questions from the audience, if anyone has a question. We're running out of time. Okay, 1 question.
Oh, one. Who's got a better question than me? Hi, we talked a lot about unpredictability, and the only thing constant with AI now is change. It's changing so rapidly. So with it changing so rapidly, if you're a company that's dependent on a lot of the foundational elements, how do you make product decisions and choices and investing in capital given things are changing so rapidly?
I think the fundamental, again, the product question that you asked depends on which layer are we talking about. Like, are we talking about a company in the application layer, tooling layer, data layer, a new foundation model company itself? Because for a foundation model company, the foundation model is a product itself. But I would say that if you're thinking of an application company, which is, I'm assuming your question is around applications that are being built on top of these models, I think the early architectural thinking should be that there is less dependence on a particular model. But on the other hand, the other thinking is also that, like, if you are trying to quickly pressure test something with your end customers, there are few companies that have established themselves as market leaders, and they are constantly iterating on the model, and they are hopefully not going to go away. So I think it's both the things. Like, you have to be lean enough so that you can pressure test the value prop very quickly with the customer, but broadly build an architecture so that it's not dependent on a particular model, because models are constantly upgrading, they're constantly changing, and the best kind of a product investment in the application side would be, from an architectural point of view, that it's completely model independent, which is hard to do, but at the same time, the early testing versus long-term vision are different things.
So own the user experience, own the user data, and make sure that the workflow or the product is not just the model, it actually extends beyond that.
Yeah, I would repeat by saying that any investment in a model itself is clearly short-lived. The question is that you need to answer if you're doing a startup is, what is long-lived in what you're doing? Raviraj gave some great examples of things like owning a user experience is always long-lived. And so it doesn't have to be that. It could be a technical advantage. It could be a technology that you are inventing that may be long-lived. But you have to have conviction on what that is, that you have built that will survive change, knowing that nothing is forever. No technology is forever. No advantage is forever.
Thank you so much. If you have any more questions, our speakers are right here. behind the stage. Thank you so much, Ashmeet. Thank you, Raviraj, and thank you, Apoorva, for joining us today.
Thank you.